Okay, so I am here with Bob from Australia. Bob from Down Under in Victoria, Australia. And this is Addy Ads, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. I'm an interviewer, public intelligence agent, and a media publisher from the Midwest. And I haven't had a perspective from Australia yet this year. It's something that I've been wanting to get to. I love hearing informed citizens' takes on what's going on around the world, and especially in their country. And Australia, as we know, is part of the Commonwealth. But I just want to welcome you, Bob, and thank you for giving me some of your time to share your experiences and everything that's been going on this year. But if you wanted to just give an intro and a little bit about yourself before we get into it deeper.
I've lived in Australia for some 65 years now. I originally came from Holland, The Hague in Holland, where I was born, 1945. And after the war, there was problems with jobs for the parents and so forth, and a lot of people. So after a few attempts of my dad, who was a businessman and an exporter in canned fruit, soups and stuff and such, he decided after 2 or 3 years of trying all sorts of entrepreneurial things to migrate to Holland, to Australia. Mum was dead against this because she had 13 odd brothers and sisters still living in Holland. Dad had 8 or 9 himself, so they came from a big family. So it was a major decision, but after 2 or 3 years of struggling, Dad and Mum finally said, yes, okay. So the next day, Dad went to the immigration office, arranged, all the necessary passport process thingies, and there we were, off to the land down under in 1956, and went to school there, local school and high school and tech school, and I ended up doing a diploma in chemistry, applied chemistry, and managed to get a lifelong position as an industrial chemist in one of our large coal-fired power stations, electrical power stations in Victoria, where we've got big reserves of brown coal underground, or just below underground, so they actually can dig the mine or dig the coal out in an open mine, open cut, open pit type of arrangement rather than tunnelling and so forth. So 35 odd years at this institution. I had the chance to retire early. They're throwing all sorts of money at us and saying, if you're over 50 and you think, technology and that is going too fast for you, or things like that, and they're all worldwide, downsizing everywhere, all these big industries and privatizing and so forth. We weren't, we were a totally government controlled enterprise, and eventually we got first corporatized, then privatized, and in the mid 1990s we became a private company, and that's when all the motions of further cuts in people were attempted and suggested. There was no forced redundancies or sackings or anything like that, but we were offered voluntary departure arrangements and packages, and they kept saying, it's not each year that they'll offer another version, and they say, next year's not going to be as good as this, etc., etc. So I just sort of looked at these things, and they wanted to make up people's mind within 2 weeks, which I wasn't going to do. So I just waited and waited, and in about 1997 or so, they come up with another proposal which was too good to refuse. So I grabbed it, and I was not even 55 years of age, and I sort of had envisaged retiring early, like not 58, 59 years of age, because we're on a good superannuation deal. And that worked out that if you get to sort of 58, 59 years of age, if you kept yourself employed at that company, you're actually losing money and you weren't really benefiting by staying at work. So I thought, you know, in the long vision, I sort of arranged to retire about 58, 59. But with all these incentives to leave early, I actually retired at age 54 in the year 2000. So I never looked back, and I've been retired 20 years and fantastic. I never really knew what I was going to do in retirement, but it goes just as fast as in the work atmosphere, you know, as you probably well relate to, with you running around all over the place, and you're only in your 20s. So yeah, time doesn't slow down, doesn't matter what you're into, so long as you've got a positive outlook and some, you know, self inbuilt purpose in your life to pursue. It's a fantastic journey, mate. So yeah, that's about it, sort of. And I've been retired for 20 years. We spend a little bit of time in a sort of a trailer type arrangement, permanent trailer set up in a local beach area, about an hour's drive from here, where, you know, on couple of nice days forecast, we just tootle off up there, hour drive, and spend a day or two up there. And we've done that for the last 20 years. I mean, it's getting a little bit, you know, do we want to sell this place or keep it going? And now my son, who's 40 odd and been locked down with or locked out of going to work for, you know, 6-7 months, he's getting absolutely fed up with being at home, luckily still employed, being at home for so long. He wants to now get out, and he says, you know, can I go down to your beach place for a month in January? I can still do all my work from there, and you know, I can go down and keep him company a bit, which he is happy with, but he said he's got to get out of the house because it's like bloody out prison, you know. So
and what does he do for work?
Hey?
What does he do for work?
He sort of followed me a little bit in getting a degree in science and also a business degree. So he is a science business degree holder, if you like, and he what he's mainly interested into now is logistics and contract management with the Victorian government. Actually, he'd been doing private contract work for 20 odd years or 15 odd years, and he's sort of seen the light that he needs to maybe settle into something more permanent with his family growing up, and he decided to go to government sort of work, and about 2 years ago, and he's now still employed with the Victorian government and working from home, and getting ready to have a break away from his prison sort of thing. So yeah, but he's doing well, and we only had one son, and he's a great guy. And you know, when he tells me 20 years later that, you know, I used to tell him to do this or that, you go, oh, he must have heard or listened to that little bit of advice from the old man.
So can we start in I guess the beginning of the pandemic, or beginning of this year? Do you remember when you first heard about it happening, and how it's developed for you in Victoria, Australia?
What I remember when it was sort of becoming newsy that our Prime Minister did say, and I've got this real, not a phobia, but I really dislike the word lockdown, you know, of recent years that have come into their vocabulary, let's say. We live across the school, and there was a year or two ago, there was some emergency. Some kid brought some knife in his pocket or something, and the school was in lockdown. I thought, a little primary school, you know, junior school in lockdown, you know, that really made me feel queasy inside, right? Just the term, lockdown. Anyway, I never liked that terminology myself. This is like a couple of years or longer probably. And then I heard early this year, when this was all starting to develop, that it was a worldwide thing, this and that. I remember clearly our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, say that we shouldn't be using the word lockdown he said that, shouldn't be using that term lockdown because of, you know, the ramification, all this. And after that, it just died, and we just kept using it over and over and over again. But anyway, about March, like anywhere else, you know, we really started to become affected. There was advice in the local paper, and clearly there was a little advice on 10 steps on how to minimize your perhaps catching this latest virus from wherever. And item 7, and I actually cut it out of the newspaper, local newspaper, and item 7 said, when you're feeling well, do not wear a mask. Clearly, right? When you're feeling well, there's 10 other points, 9 other points, but item 7 was, when you're feeling well, do not wear a mask, that type of thing. I thought, oh yeah, I'll just cut that out, threw it aside somewhere. It took me months, took me ages to find it again when they flip-flopped on, you know, you must wear a mask and bandanas or hankies, anything, right? And they flip-flopped on that. So that was back in March, and, you know, slowly it just, everywhere you looked, it was COVID-19, this and that. And I thought, no, I've got to look into this. So I just went deep, looked else everywhere. I'd always been in tune with George's website and his connection with bioweapons and nuclear bloody weapons and all this. You know, I really followed George for 4 years plus, and probably had about 3 or 4 months break there, you know, when I thought, yeah, I think I'll get the message, and then went back to it. And so I've done all my studies on this COVID thing. I even wrote a letter to the local newspaper, Addy, and I just said, look, people, don't you think there's something funny going on with this so-called virus or whatever? I said, look at the death rate. Look at the death rate, not the cases. Compare it to the deaths due to flus every year. Look at the total mortality on all diseases in Australia in the last 3-5 years. It's exactly the same. This is mid-August, and that would bring us right in the thick and in the middle of the winter flu season, you know. So I just wrote a pretty factual plea to the readers of the newspaper to, you know, don't you feel there's maybe something not quite right? Guess what? Didn't get published, did it? I wrote it right to the last allowable item, what do you call it? The number of words you could use, 4,000 characters, you know. I sort of had to tweet it down from about 6,000, got carried away a bit. So I got it down to 4, thinking, hey, so I waited a week, 2 weeks, nothing in the paper. And so I thought, you blasted, you know, my personal experience with the local media, they're just not interested in looking at another perspective or point of view. So,
yeah.
You know.
And you said you talked to some police officers recently, right? Just as
yeah, when I was in Melbourne. Yeah, did I tell you that, did I? I wasn't sure if I wrote that. Yeah, we were up in Melbourne City, right, which is a couple of hours drive from where I live in the country area. And Melbourne City, right, that's the central district part of Melbourne was, I don't know, probably very, very deserted, not entirely void of people anymore, because we're actually getting back into opening restaurants and stuff like that. But there was this big business that annually put on these Christmas displays, you know, very exotic, very high tech, and very great for the kids to
keep going. I'm going to fix this.
Yeah, going through these big display windows with the latest Christmassy things, you know, and the latest techo stuff. And everybody's wearing the mask outside, which you don't have to do anymore, right? That was restricted a few weeks ago. But when you go into most shops still, there's either a sign outside or, you know, you'll quickly get told to put on a mask once you enter inside shopping businesses like supermarkets and maybe some restaurants as well initially before you actually take a meal and that. And there was these 3 masked policemen standing outside. I thought I'll have a little chat with them, you know. And I said to one of them, or to all of them, are you guys setting an example with your mask here? I thought that you didn't have to wear a mask outside. Oh, shit. I'm straight to the point, mate. So we sort of got talking. I said, you know, there's been some recent studies to prove that the wearing of mask is really not effective at all. And then I leaned over to one young cop of the three. One was a lady, but one of the boys, I sort of went over to just to reach the side of his head, right, to say, look, there's enough room in the side of your mask to allow a truck through. What do you think you're doing? He goes, don't touch me. I thought, see you later, mate. So I walked off. And then went around the corner while the wife and the son and the grandson were doing a bit of shopping. I went for a walk around the street, right? Fairly deserted, maybe 10%, 20% of the usual crowd were wandering around the street. This is Sunday morning. And what was I going to say? 99% of the people wearing bloody mask outside. Now, I can understand that because every time they duck into a shop, they've got to bloody pull the mask out and put it on again. So people are just lazy, and some of them find it great to wear the mask, you know, I guess. But 99% wear a mask outside when it's not necessary to. Actually on, right? Not under the chin, on. I was walking around without one, not even under my thing. My wife said, take this with you. I said, well, I'm not going to go to any shops if I have to wear a mask. I'll just bypass. Anyway, saw this young, beautiful looking woman standing there having a smoke outside, I don't know, one of the shops there. And she had the mask under her chin, you know, having a puff. I said, geez, that's an expensive hobby, that smoking these days, isn't it? She goes, yeah, I'll say. And I said, what's a fag? What's a smoke worth these days? $1, $2? Yeah, a couple of dollars. Like, oh, God, unbelievable, isn't it? I smoke a pipe myself, you know, the old traditional pipe. I see you having a little puff every now and then. Actually, it doesn't look real great on camera, I must say, Addy, you know, even though I love to have a puff. But, you know, I notice Tracy every now and then has this puff and this blast of smoke going across the screen. It's not great. I was going to say television. It's not great viewing, but anyway, just
okay. I'll take that feedback, and yeah, I'll trying to cut back. I've definitely stopped doing it as much as I did back in like March and April. I was actually, when I was in Oregon, I would just, you know, every 2 minutes. But I stopped for a bit, and then I started. You know, that seems to be the consensus, is people don't like it. So.
What, on the screen, you mean?
Yeah.
One.
There you go. Here, I think I got mine actually, but I can't hit it in the house I'm in right now, unfortunately. So.
No. When I retired, I thought I hadn't smoked a pipe for probably nearly 20 years, and I thought in retirement, geez, I must take up the pipe again. I saved them all, cleaned them, and all that, and sort of put them away for historic museum pieces in the bedroom somewhere, you know. And I never really touched them till about 5 years ago, or no, a couple of years ago. I started smoking a few cigars, but that was getting out of hand, so I thought, no, go back to the pipe. And 30, 40 years ago when I started smoking, it was about $2 a packet, and now they're over $100 a bloody 50-gram packet, you know. I mean, it's outrageous, really, you know, the way they tax it every year. But anyway, so where were we? Yes, I was talking to this lady having a cigarette, and I said, yes. I said, how are you finding all this? Anyway, I said, are you from Greece? You know, she had this beautiful tan, you know. I couldn't pick it. I used to be able to pick nationalities, you know, like 40 years ago, coming from Europe, whether you're Polish and all this, and whether you're Greek or Italian. I could sort of tell. These days, with all the intermix of people, I haven't got a clue anymore. But very nice, and I thought I'd have a chat. You Greek? No, close, she goes. I said, Albania, you know, near Greece. She said, how'd you know? Spot on, she goes. pretty good, you know. She said my dad was Turkish, isn't it? Anyway, we just had a little chat, and I said, you know, how do you like wearing a mask? No, I don't like it, but, you know, what do you do? If you don't wear it, you get fined. I don't want to pay a fine, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, said goodbye. Walked along a bit further, another youngish guy having a smoke, no mask. I said, there you go, mate. Enjoy yourself. Yeah. No great conversation, but he wasn't wearing a mask or had one under his chin. So there were two, had a little chat, said my goodbyes, and wandered off. And I think I ran into one other person, I can't remember now, but a lot of the restaurants shut, a lot of the businesses shut. This is in downtown Melbourne, right, the city centre of Melbourne, where it's about, I don't know, probably half a square mile, half a mile, you know, maybe nearly a mile square is the actual central business district of Melbourne. I rarely go there these days, but, you know, I thought, geez, the family wanted to take the young grandson to the city. I didn't really want to go, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'll go, you know, just to actually see what the city of Melbourne's like, because I'm from the country. I don't sort of get into that busyness and traffic problems and jammed, but it was fairly quiet, and many shops shut, many retails closing down, and it was really a sad sign to see from what I remembered it, you know, a year ago.
I've seen quite a bit of police brutality videos that actually have come out of Australia in particular. Have you witnessed anything like that?
No, I haven't seen it because, you know, I don't really watch the mainstream news. The news I get, whether we're in lockdown or whether this has happened or whether the Prime Minister or the Premier of Victoria, that's like the Governor of Victoria, makes an announcement, I get from my wife, who watches the news a little bit, and I get my intelligence on the real world from her, you know, as to what's happening, because I just don't want to be part of it. I'm not interested if they're telling us to wear a mask. I'll just go out there and say, hey, you're not wearing a mask. I'll go, who said? Where are you supposed to know this from? Well, you know, it's on television. I don't watch TV. You know, I'll just find a reason to whittle out of it. So, but I haven't worn a mask and since March, right? Anytime, only once. I was in a big, what would you call it, retail place where you can get gardening stuff, handyman tools, everything, plants for your garden, all this. I was in there looking for some tomato plants and a few other little seedlings to put in the ground for coming summer coming up. Actually, today's officially the first day of summer in Australia, down here where I am. We start the summer season on the 1st of December, not the 21st, like most countries around the world. And of course, we're in the summer, whereas you're in the opposite end of the thingy scale. So I went in this shop, didn't wear a mask, didn't sort of indicated that you needed to wear one. If it did, I didn't see it. I'm pretty blind for reading signs anyway. I walked straight in, nobody stopped me. So I went to the garden section and picked up me few little seedlings of tomato and whatnot, and a couple of other things, silver beet or something, and put it on the cashier table and ready to pay. And it was winter time, and I had this long scarf draping down me thing, just in case I got a bit cold. So that was just hanging there, and you know, in that time, you could put that over, and you know, you'd be protected. In those days, remember bandanas, handmade hankies, bloody anything, shirt over. That was great until they flip-flopped on that again, you know, months later, as if they didn't really understand what was going on, and suddenly they did. So I went to pay for these items of plant, and the cashier lady said, "You're not wearing a mask. I can't sell you this stuff." That was the only time I got, you know, well, what do? Do I say, well, okay, I won't have it? But it was a case I wanted to have some little tomato plant. So I got me loose end of my scarf and I just went like that. I said, "Is that okay?" She said, "Yep." I laughed my head off. Unbelievable. I laughed my frigging head off. Now, I got to say, right, that I haven't worn a mask, which is true, outside, down the street, for all this time, 7-8 months, right? But I don't do the shopping for food, right? So the wife does that, thankfully. So I would say that if I had to buy my own food and it came to the point where I can't buy food unless I wore a mask, well, guess what? I'm going to wear the bloody mask to survive, right? Against my better judgment, I'm not going to bloody starve or pay a fine for that lunacy. I'm not going to go to jail out of principle. I'm not that type either, but I'm dead against wearing them for my own. I've done my own research. I've done all the research from all the great people, you know, the Judy Mikovic's, the Andrew Kaufman's, the studied the Koch's postulates and the, you know, the Spanish flu and all the tests they did on volunteers where they absolutely could not infect the sick people with the Spanish flu. Of a very rare report, it's out there, of 100 volunteers at 3 different places. They got some sailor volunteers, healthy sailor volunteers that obviously were maybe in prison or something for some reason, and to volunteer, they'd get a lighter sentence, all this. And they volunteered to be infected in any way possible by these sick people in infirmary and in hospital with the bloody Spanish flu. So they allowed one group to be very close, to actually cough on them, to take, you know, swabs from their eye and from their nose and from their mouth and transferred it onto these sailors. And after a week, which is usually the time you should be able to, what do you call it, get a, what do you call it?
Start showing symptoms.
Be infected from someone, right, or catch it from someone and show the symptoms of a flu. With after a week or 2 weeks, not one, I was going to go not one person copped the Spanish flu. And, you know, that the Spanish flu, I think, was a SARS-type virus at the time, from what some retrospective studies have done from memory, I'm pretty sure. So I'm transferring that, you know, Spanish flu was not contagious. So I'm sort of extending that no flu is contagious to the extent that we are led to believe that you can get it from touching, from coughing, from spitting, from in your face exposure from a sick person. It cannot be transmitted. So the conclusion was, by the doctors that were doing these tests, wow, we don't really know what's going on. We always believed this and that. So basically they said, now we don't know what to believe, right? But clearly those guys, 100 volunteers at 3 different locations back in the 1919 era time, did not get exposed to this Spanish flu. So, right, and then you look at the recent tests and studies that, if you're interested in, if people are interested in delving deep into that sort of thing, like I am, and I've got the time to do it, you've got all these questions. I'm not saying I've got the answer, and I don't saying, you know, it's wearing a mask is totally senseless or useless. It may have its application. I'm not saying one way or the other. The virus itself, what I can understand, is as natural as bacteria to our environment and for our bodies to, you know, to thrive. And there's just so much misinformation, disinformation, not enough information. And I don't think anybody on the earth has a grip on the whole truth of the matter. So I'll just say, I don't believe anything anymore to some extent, but I'm open to every possible option or idea without judging it that, oh, I'm going down that path. Well, I'm not going down that path because it might prove out to be incorrect, Addy. That's why I'm going, nah, I'll leave the door open, right? You got a view, let's hear it. Oh, all this business of, yeah, I agree with you. And no, I don't agree. Just because somebody or someone agrees with your idea makes you, the person that's coming out with it, feel better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the truth, right? That's the problem. We all agree with each other. Yeah, we all agree that germs cause disease, but it's not, in my view, it's not necessarily, and from what I've read, it's definitely not the whole truth or even a smidgen of the truth. You know what I mean? So it's a big subject, and I would not be the first. I'd be the first to admit that I know a lot about it. I know tons about it. And when I try to explain to my wife, you know, she can only see a little bit of it. And then I'm saying, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not that. Yes, but you got to do this. I said, you can do what you like. She said, but you'll do something silly. She said, the other day, like what we were just talking about, you were talking to the police and, you know, you were nearly picking a fight with them. I'm not that stupid. But, you know, she could see me interacting or whatever. And she walked off quickly, you know, in case she saw her husband getting arrested or something. But I'm not that bloody stupid.
Why do you think this is going on? Do you think this is a zoonotic virus that has just happened and we're all reacting to it, or is it something deeper?
I think it's a natural thing that comes around year after year. You're talking about the virus thing. You know, I think we as a people, or the medical people, they just put on a different name to each unusual strain of whatever comes around naturally year in, year out. To me, to my studies and whatnot, I think it's a natural phenomenon, but it can be unnatural, like, you know, listening to George and his work with, you know, for Dietrich and all the biological continuations after the wars, where they're actually starting to make artificial viruses, where they've got things like George does it a lot. I love it when I watch you see his hand go down that way. This latest one's actually got man-made HIV viruses in them, and that's not a natural process. But the other thing is that, to me, viruses are a natural way. This is just my thinking, right? Is a natural way, is nature's way, Earth's way to periodically clean the bloody environment of the Earth. The same way as we get flus and coughs each year, it's a natural thing for our body to, you know, your body's accumulate certain toxins and stuff over the year, and when it's ready to get rid of it, you start coughing and spluttering, and people say, "Oh, you're sick." No, you're actually been sick, but the coughing is actually a sign that your body is healing itself by getting rid of these toxins through your nose or ears or mouth and such like. So I think these annual epidemics, the bubonic plague, the black plague, Ebola, and all these horrible bloody diseases over the years, they're all natural things. They come and they disappear as fast as they came from God knows where, and they naturally disappear. But in the last 100 or so years, doctors and medical experts and God knows what are trying to tell us that vaccines and the like is what slowed down and eradicated most of these pandemics. My view, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but my take is that and I've studied a lot on statistics, and, you know, you can play with statistics and whatnot. Did you ever read, what's it called? Virus Mania by a couple of German guys.
No, I haven't.
Where, you know, they've done all these studies on measles, polio, whatnot, the outbreaks, and then when a vaccine came on, the vaccines usually came after the pandemic had started to come down on the curve, right? And then all these medical people said, see, vaccination eradicated polio to large degree, eradicated measles, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the statistic, it's not that clear that that's the case. Now, whether it's 100% true that the vaccines or whatever didn't have some contributions to speeding it up, but my take is that it was a natural phenomenon by nature to, my guess is to cleanse the planet of its toxins over the previous years or year. And, you know, we can do a little bit at the edges to speed it up perhaps, but I think it comes naturally and it goes naturally, and the earth is a beautiful bloody being or you know, entity that cleanses itself in total balance with the rest of the cosmos. So,
okay, wow. What do you think of well, I want to ask about your government, your thoughts on your government. What do you think about how Australia's government is finishing?
I think they're following the same script as all the other governments. I can't believe how they just about verbatim, you know, there's no originality. They're listening to the same, you know, CDC types equivalents in Australia as you guys do, and World Health Organization, the medical experts. And, you know, when you do extensive reading into all this stuff, you say they're not as expert as what we are led to believe. They're basing most of these stories and advice on assumptions and guesses, you know, which it's horrible. But when I look around, I'm seeing people still wearing a mask. They don't have to wear the mask, and they're just not capable or just not interested in finding really or knowing that they're being lied to a large extent. I'm not saying totally, but we're getting the exact same scripts as you guys are, Addy, you know. And so it's almost like they're going in concert, and if you're a Sweden or a Denmark and you go, no, we're not having masks, and then when you look at their record, it's really no different to the surrounding countries in Northern Europe and Scandinavia as the ones that have clamped down with all the, you know, real strict quarantine and mask wearing and lockdown restrictions. They do have their social distancing and some common sense approaches, but it's, in Denmark anyway, in Sweden rather, was largely voluntary. And I was telling my son on the weekend, he said, yeah, but now Sweden's just shooting up. Well, I don't know if it is, you know. You can pick any little statistic from 1 week and say, look, here's the proof, and then next week you come along, it's on the down, you know the word, statistics, lies, and statistics, or whatever the saying is, you know, you can pick anything you like out of statistic. So we're following the same flaming robotic script as the rest of the world. I can't believe how practically, right, the whole world could have been taken in to ruddy well lock down their economy worldwide. I cannot believe how they got, or how persuasive whoever it was that made every world, you know, close to every world leader take the message to lock down the country's economy for something as dubious as killing people left, right and centre as this COVID-19. I'm not saying there's not some new upper respiratory friggin' disease that's, you know, popped into our thing. In no way, you know, when people say, oh, COVID's a hoax, it's a scam, it's, you know, be careful. You've got to explain enough. I notice you do that quite a bit effectively, right? You separate the word hoax from, you know, the symptoms of the disease is not a bloody hoax, but all the measures to try and prevent it is highly dubious or not very helpful, to say the least, which you could call a hoax, you know, as an exaggerated statement or whatever. But a lot of people go, oh, this is a 9/11, it's a hoax. Yeah, what part of it is a hoax, you know? Bloody the buildings came down, is that a hoax? probably 3,000 or 4,000 people were killed. Is that a hoax? You know, people just come out with this word and you go, oh, it's a bloody conspiracy theory. Oh, it's a hoax. It's, you know, so you've got to use words very wisely, very carefully when you're communicating. You know, that seems to be largely missing when people try to give a message of hope and positivity. But
yeah. Have you been following the election here in my country at all?
Oh, yeah, big time. I was up all night watching you guys for a start. And, you know, oh, yeah, it looks like Trump was going to make it, you know, whenever time, 1 o'clock in the morning when you guys started to wrap up. I forget if that was the right time. And then, you know, you wake up in the morning, what? And I used to take screenshots of this and that of you guys and others, you know, in different channels. And 2016 election, I was watching Hillary's way ahead, right through the night. I was watching it way ahead. And, you know, 1 minute past midnight or whatever it was, 1 o'clock, she bloody concedes, I thought. And I was watching all the mainstream news. I didn't believe it because I also saw other sides. I don't know if George was around suggesting it, but I was watching non-mainstream media sites mainly, and I was seeing Trump looking really great, and then switched over to the others, you know, NBC, CNNs, and there were no Hillary, you know, and then boom, 1 o'clock. It's like what we're getting with Trump and Biden, right? Biden's coming along when everything's closed, 4 o'clock in the morning, the bloody vertical curve, and Biden just leading, you know, when we all wake up. No, if that's not a scam, if that's not going to get found out, I'll give up. No, I won't give up, but I'll be very disappointed. So, yeah, I'll be following you guys. You know, I do the election mainly, you know, the rest of politics I'm not that interested in because I'm not really politically minded. I like to see justice and truth in, you know, when people have a say, and I don't like to see bloody fraud being committed in your face like this one. You know, it's been going on for years and years, you know, let's face it. Trump talked about it 8 years ago, and others have talked about it for years, in the Clinton and whatnot, Carter administration, and even Reagan time, you know, that these things were going on, but they could never really prove, and it was always just too hard, basically, to prove. So, well,
I appreciate you following us, Bob, and I do have to call time here, but I'd love to chat again at some point to get your perspective on your country and everything that's going on. Any final requests of the audience or anything you want to plug?
Look, the whole message that we're seeing is based on fear. I would just say, try to get out of your fear, learn to know what really makes you fearful, learn more about yourself, study your inner self more, of where you can find your peace, because everything that's been thrown at us is fear-based and it's not helpful. If you really want to change something, you've got to start looking at yourself, start to change yourself and create the world that you want to see. And it's not that difficult. You know, if you come from a place of happiness or peace, that's what you'll see. If you come from a place of anger or frustration, that's what you'll manifest. That's what actually will be produced in your everyday life. You know, if you're a loving, friendly person, you know, at peace with yourself, you will actually create, because you will only tune into peaceful, loving situations. And I've had a great life so far, and I reckon I'm living a divine life right now. People say, yeah, what's that mean? In peace, tranquility. Has anything, if somebody says, how did COVID affect you? If you'd asked me, hey, Bob, how did COVID affect you in the last 8 months? I would have to say, absolutely nil. Hasn't affected me personally. The wife, yeah, I'm not talking about her. Me personally, nothing's changed. I've still got the same outlook, still got the same understanding. I know where I'm coming from, I believe, and have a good idea where I'm going, where the world's going, and I'm not fearful or afraid. And that's probably what I would say to people. Don't be afraid. Live your life and bring joy to yourself, your family, and the world will return this joy and peace to you automatically.
Hold on.
I heard that.
No, I'm waiting for her to pick it up. My friend.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, she got it.
Yeah, so, right, that's probably how I'd like, start with yourself, make yourself a better person. Don't worry about what may happen or what he might do, whether Trump will actually ultimately win the election. It'll make no difference in the end. You personally are the one that's going to make a difference in your life. You can pick that side. We're all on the same side, right? We're all on the same side. We're human beings, but we're naturally split into opposites because that's how creation is born, with opposite keeping in perfect balance. You just got to find the middle way of not too extreme on either side and that way, and live the middle way, like old Gautama Buddha used to say, just live the middle way. And people say, oh, what's that? But just don't go too far overboard on either side. Just, right? Walk the steady, balanced flow of the river of life, if you like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob, for chatting with me.
Great to be on, and we'll look forward to maybe catching up sometime in the future. But I do watch your shows, and you're doing great, mate. I love the way you interview people and whatnot, and I enjoy keeping an eye on America through your guys' eyes, which I think is something unique and different to what you probably get in the newspapers and on TV. So much appreciated.
Definitely. I appreciate you, Bob.
Thank you, mate.
Well, that was Bob from Downunder in Victoria, Australia. Informed citizen outlook on this year. And we thank Bob for tuning in. And we thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you guys all next time. Stay frosty, folks.